Okay, continuing on with my answering questions for my Lands of Ash release day from my Facebook page. And this one is still Bethany because of her last question. She's got more than one question here, so I will link her blog, Simmering Minds, once again in the description below. And this is 4 questions, but they're interconnected, so I'm going to try to do them all in one go, but we'll see how that goes. Let's see. First one is, how do you incorporate your faith into your writing? Is it intentional at all? What are your goals in that? How do you hope that your books further the kingdom of Christ? I think that what are your goals in that can be rolled into the other one, so I'll count that as 3 questions. All right. The easiest one of those to answer is it intentional at all? Because I don't do anything intentionally. I am very impulsive. I rarely plan anything. I don't like to plan things. It takes the fun out of it for me. I have friends who, I'll say, can we do this? And they're like, well, what about this and this and this? And I'm like, oh, we could just start and see what happens. And they're like, no, we have to plan. I'm like, no, let's not plan. No planning. So I don't plan anything. I might say a prayer and ask God to, give him the project, say, what do you want me to do with this? But as for planning or, messages I want to convey, I kind of let that come out of the story as it writes. And I'm very open to my stories changing partway on. The last couple I have written have, I try to write out an outline for them, but the end product differs from the outline a good deal. Something always happens along the way, and it takes a turn or, some sort of alteration. Sometimes because the characters changed, sometimes because I realized that there's a plot hole that I didn't think of, and it's easier to write away from the plot hole than it is to, patch it up. But anyway, so I don't do a lot intentionally. There's a scene in one of the Pink Panther related movies, The Shot in the Dark, where Inspector Clouseau falls off an ottoman and he says, everything I do is carefully planned. But that's about how carefully I plan. I'm about as carefully planned in my life as Inspector Clouseau falling off an ottoman. So, yeah, I don't do things intentionally. I like the story to lead me. Because of that, let's see. I don't know if I have goals for my books to whether they're going to in any way at all, because it's hard to have a goal when you're just kind of like playing it by ear. And I do think it opens me up to be used if I need to be, like if something is a message that needs to be said. Since I don't have a plan, it can kind of be slipped in there, at a moment's notice. And I like doing things at a moment's notice. But I like to, fly with the seat of my pants. Anyway, so how many bad cliches can I use for that? Fly with the seat of my pants. Anyway, so and how do I incorporate my faith in my book? I mean, there's a couple different answers to that. Religion and fantasy is somewhat problematic to me. There's any fantasy, of course, based in our world can incorporate Christianity and stuff because it's our world. It should have the same history. And I think The Dragon and the Scholar falls into that. I don't see that The Dragon and the Scholar took place in a made-up world. To me, it's an alternate version of our world that just happens to have dragons and no recognizable historical figures. But they have the same basic history. They're practicing Christianity. They reference there's a couple of references to Bible stories in there, especially if the character Will, who talks about his mother teaching him about Moses at one point. But most of my other books take place in an imaginary world, with the exception of maybe Thaddeus, because I'm not sure exactly where Thaddeus takes place. It's a very once upon a time thing because it is a kid's story. But anyway, Lands of Ash and Beggar Magic, let's start with those two, are both in worlds other than our own, with alternate histories and alternate systems. They have magic that isn't in our world. And when you're writing a religion for a made-up world, you've got a couple of choices. If you want to go they have Christianity, they just have different names for things route, you can do that. but then it risks turning into an allegory, and I'm not ready to write an allegory yet. I don't have a good story coming out of that. It's been done a lot of times, and it's been done well. I mean, Lewis, obviously, Narnia is the best one, or I would say the most well known at least. So it can be done, but I've never been given a story that to me is a allegorical parallel to the Christ story. So I don't have that story yet. If I do get that story someday, maybe I'll write it, but a lot of people have already done that really well. I don't feel that that's a story I'm being led to tell. And because of that, so if you don't want to do that route, I guess you could have it as that's part of their history, but I'm always concerned when I make up a fake religion that some idiot somewhere is going to start practicing it. I call it the Jedi Knight effect, because there was a point in, I want to say, the 90s when people were registering their religion as Jedi Knight. And I'm like, you do know that was a made-up thing, right? And I suppose if you're an atheist, you think all religion is made up. But, at least it wasn't, some person out there who actually says, yeah, I just wrote that. I actually have it copyrighted for a movie, which I made money off of, and I sell toys. So, I mean, there's a line, but I'm always a little concerned that if you get too detailed into that, somebody is going to start practicing your religion, and the next thing you know, you'll have the Church of Aslan somewhere, which I'm sure exists if I were to Google it. But, so I don't like to go too detailed on it for partially that reason. I like to have a positive creator force in my worlds. And Lands of Ash does have sort of a religious system that I touch on lightly, but they don't have a Christ figure in it at this point. I might introduce that. The idea behind Lands of Ash is that human culture has been slowly burned away. They've lost a lot of their culture. They've lost a lot of their history. They've lost all their major cities. And it's my idea of what would be preserved. And so they don't have any churches. They don't have any temples. All that's left is what's been passed on from word of mouth at this point. So the religious system is not very detailed or filled in at this point. But they do have a creator, and they do have a ceremony to pray to the creator, and they do have different characters who have different opinions on how the creator affects them. Mainly Willa, Carver, Miguel, and Kettle, though their religious beliefs, or in the case of Miguel, lack thereof, do affect their decision-making and choices. And some of them end up in a different place than they start out with. I've never actually written a conversion scene. I'm not sure if I would be good at it. Well, I have written a conversion scene. I forgot when I was like 16, but it wasn't very good, and I knew it wasn't very good, and it didn't feel real to me. I think because my own conversion happened when I was so young that I didn't have a personal experience to draw from of, coming to that from a place of brokenness, but which is what most conversion scenes need to be in order to be powerful. So it didn't feel real to me, and it's because of that I've kind of shied away from writing one, just because I don't think I could do it justice. Maybe someday I'll try again, but it would be something hard for me to write believably. So let's see, what was I talking about? Dang it. Let me go back to the questions that will help me remember what I was doing, because how do I hope your books further the kingdom of Christ? Let's go with that one. I hope my books show that you have to have something to believe in beyond yourself, something, because that's I think the main purpose of why I continue to put a creator into my books that my characters depend on, that my characters call on occasion, because I want to show that my characters need something that to keep them centered or grounded, and that points their life in a certain direction. I mean, Carver has that compass point quote that I used he uses it about his family, but it kind of later on, it kind of goes in the other ones that your religious beliefs help you when you're in a time of crisis. It helps you it shows what your faith is made of when you have to choose, okay, things did not go the way I wanted them to, and now how am I going to react to this? Am I going to curse God? Am I going to thank him for the new opportunity? Am I going to see purpose to this? And the way different characters react to that in Lands of Ash was really important to drive. And I actually have them doing this. There's a theological, philosophical debate that McGill, Carver, and Kettle I'll get into at one point. And a couple people thought I should cut it down. I think I did shorten it a little bit because it was a little bit wordy in the first draft. But the concept is whether they believe in God because of the terrible days they live in. And I didn't want to do the straight out Tolkien, we can't choose the days we're given, but I wanted to show how different faiths react to that, which I guess is kind of something that was inspired a little bit by one of my favorite books is Cancer Ward by, I'm probably going to mispronounce his name so badly, Solzhenitsyn. He's a Russian author. That's why I'm mispronouncing his name so badly. And I don't know his personal faith, but I loved how that book showed the different ways that people react to hardship based on what was important to them. There was the one who believed in the state and that the state would save him. There was kind of a rugged individualist character who, he was just trying to search for value in life. And then there was is that the one with the character who was called the Baptist? That might have been the Day in Life by Ivan Denisov. Anyway, there was a character who his anchor was his faith. And so I'm interested in what different people with different beliefs do in times of crisis to an extent. And I wanted to show a character who actually does have faith and who allowed times of trouble or basically not getting his way to take him into a dark place. So because while he spoke about having, faith, he really had faith basically in his own holiness, and your own holiness isn't going to get you anywhere. And so when that was challenged, and he did come to I'm giving away spoilers now. Sorry. So yeah, I've got things that are important to me, and one of them is my faith. But like I said, I write very impulsively, so what ends up on the page is never planned, and it just goes the way it's supposed to go, and it works for me. And I like that. So, yeah, I hope people come away from my books with this feeling that, there is a hope beyond the what can be seen. I think that's why I write fantasy, is because I'm really thirsty for this world to be more than what we can see and experience, and for hard facts. I want it to be fantastical. I want there to be questions that I can't answer because there's something bigger than myself. And that's why I think I'm drawn to fantasy over and over again, because I want things to be more. And I have this really logical brain that argues me out of believing in Bigfoot, and it argues me out of believing in the Loch Ness Monster as much as I want to. I see the evidence, and it's like, But I do believe there is enough evidence for God, and so my logical brain can't talk me out of that one. And it's nice to have that feeling of wonder left in, you can't pump all the awe out of the world.